Where did you grow up, and what did you first start training in?
So I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York, which you guys would call pretty much Canada, being a
That's up
being
there.
a
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
New
yeah,
York, where you
yeah,
guys are, right, Canada.
yeah.
So I grew up in upstate New York in Niagara Falls, and you know it was I was a wrestler. I played football in high school, but it was the wrestling that was my vehicle to get me out of New York and into Michigan, and I went to Michigan State.
When did you first get? When did you first see the sport MMA, UFC? When did you first
I
watch your first UFC?
I watched my first UFC when it first came out in 1993. I was taking karate at the time, and me and my friends, we would always debate these. We would go on these
Yes.
long debates who would win between Mike Tyson and and Bruce Lee, and who was better between all these different disciplines. And then right before our eyes, what we talked about materialized in the actual fight and like in the organization. And we learned about it was going to happen in a black belt magazine, that the UFC was going to happen in a black belt magazine. So we were able to watch the first one. We were babysitting, we babysat, and our babysitter had a cheater box. So we ended up watching our first UFC there. And at the time, we were like, this is amazing. We and then from that day on, we would do like, fights and stuff like that, but we never knew it could ever turn into anything serious.
Isn't it what you just said is hysterical because there's not going to be another time here, never a time now going forward. Nobody will ever have those conversations that we had. I had the same conversations with my friends. Who would win with the karate guy? Who would win between Van Damme or that Steven Seagal? Or does that stuff work in a real fight? Or
Yeah.
everybody would always, the death punch, the McDojo people. We didn't know until that
No,
first
we did.
UFC, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
No, I mean we grew up. I grew up in like the karate era, and I was like a karate guy. I took Tang Sudo, and we practiced the one shot, one kill. You know what I'm saying? So we thought like, somebody who has some boxing, they may be good, but it only takes that one blow that's gonna make them incapacitated and truly, change the way the fight's gonna go. But we seen like we also say like see people get you once you get your knee kicked out, like how John Jones does,
Yeah.
your kneecap will break and you won't be able to walk. Well, we learned that that wasn't true as well. So I mean, there was a lot of things that was a lot of myths about fighting that was dispelled with the UFC coming around.
It's amazing. And then from that, how did you get that? Did you see, or you saw the first Ultimate Fighter, I imagine.
Yeah, so I was working at a hospital at the time in Lansing, Michigan, and I seen the Ultimate Fighter the first season, and then Dan Severn was a mentor of mine. I would fight on some of his shows out in Iowa or in Indiana, and he was being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And then he calls me one day and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard about the Ultimate Fighter show?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you know, they said they'll take a look at somebody if I had, if I knew anybody who would be interested in doing that, but it's for heavyweight. The next season is for heavyweight." And I'm like, "I can do it, Dan. I can do it." And Dan was like, he laughed at me because he's like, "No, no, it's for heavyweight." And, and I said, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
could do it." And then he's like, "No, you're like 185 pounds soaking wet. There's no way you can do it." So my mission from, then was to kind of prove that I can do it. So I put on a bunch of weight just so I can bulk up and do the show.